Today, we're going to look at something really personal, a story someone bravely shared about the link between anxiety and this powerful need for control. We're going to break down the patterns they describe and really explore what these signals from our inner world might mean. All right, let's get into it. So, the person who shared this started with a really vulnerable request. They said, "Please, no hate. Hello, I need you. 1. I work at a cash register. I count the money once, twice, 3 times. Everything is okay, and yet I keep going and going when I see that everything is 6. 2. When I leave my workplace, I go back to see if it is definitely locked, and even though it is, I check again and again and again. 3. I don't have the habit of brushing my teeth. I don't like it, I often skip it, but I really care about clean hair, a shower, and skincare. 3. When I have to go out somewhere, putting on makeup, I focus a lot on the makeup and it takes me a lot of time and I have to start much earlier, several hours. 4. When I write, I always check several times if I have written correctly. I try to make everything okay. There are many more, but these are just a few things." First things first, thank you so much to the person who shared this. It takes a lot of courage. And I want to be really clear about something. What's been described here, these aren't flaws. They're not weird habits. Think of them as signals, powerful signals that your mind is working overtime, using a ton of energy to manage some really big feelings inside. So to really understand what's going on, it helps to kind of zoom out and look for the bigger picture. These behaviors might seem random and disconnected, but they actually tell a very clear story about how anxiety shows up in our day-to-day lives. Okay, so the first pattern that just jumps right out is the repetitive checks. You see it with counting the money, going back to check the lock, rereading messages to make sure they're perfect. Every single one of those actions is an attempt to get 100% certainty, right, in that moment of doubt. Now, this is where it gets so interesting, because this isn't random, it's a cycle, a loop. It all starts with that little voice in your head, the what-if thought. That thought immediately causes your anxiety to spike. So you do the check, you count the money again, you jiggle the door handle, and for a second, you feel relief. But it doesn't last. Pretty soon, the doubt comes creeping back in, and the whole loop starts all over again. So here's the key. The problem isn't that you don't know the door is locked. The problem is that you can't tolerate even the tiniest sliver of uncertainty. This cycle of obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors is a dynamic we often see in conditions like obsessive-compulsive disorder or OCD. Now, I want to be incredibly clear here. This is not a diagnosis. We're simply using this framework to understand the psychological engine that's running in the background. All right, let's look at the next pattern, which is perfectionism. We see it in taking hours to do makeup or obsessively checking writing for any possible error. This is way more than just wanting to look nice or do a good job. This is a need for things to be absolutely perfect. And this quote really gets to the heart of it. This kind of perfectionism is really just anxiety in a different outfit. It's not about vanity. It's about a deep, often unconscious feeling that if something isn't perfect, if there's a flaw, then you're not safe. You'll be judged or something bad will happen. So perfection becomes this armor you try to wear. So this brings us to something that might seem like a total contradiction. On one hand, there's incredible meticulous care for hair, skin, and makeup. But on the other, an avoidance of brushing teeth. How does that make any sense? Well, here's the thing about anxiety. It doesn't always play by the rules of logic. We tend to focus our control on the things that are really visible, the things we feel like we're being judged on by society, like our appearance. Other tasks might get avoided, maybe because they don't give that same hit of control, or maybe there's even an unpleasant sensation tied to them. It's not a flaw. It's just how anxiety works. It picks and chooses its battles. Okay, so we've put a name to some of these patterns, but just knowing what you're doing is only step one. The much, much more important question is about the impact. How is this all affecting your life? I want you to ask yourself this, really. Are these routines eating up hours of your day? Do you feel drained by the end of it all? Do they create stress, making you late or causing friction with other people? If the answer to any of those is yes, that's a huge sign that these strategies are actually costing you more than they're helping. And it's a really, really good reason to think about talking with a professional. So, what's the way forward? Well, the path to feeling better isn't about finding new and better ways to control everything. It's actually the opposite. It's about learning, gently and slowly, to live with a little bit of uncertainty. And that journey starts with awareness and some small, safe experiments. So let's talk about one of those experiments. And I want you to think of this not as a cure, but just as a chance to be a curious scientist of your own mind. You're just gathering data with zero judgment. Here's how it could work. Next time you feel that powerful urge to check something like the money, do it one extra time. And then you stop. Or after you lock your door, say it out loud, "It is locked." You're using your voice to anchor the memory. And then, the hardest part, you walk away. And then, you just observe. You notice what happens inside you. How strong is that feeling of anxiety? Pay attention to it. How long does it stick around? Because here's what you might discover, and it's an incredible insight. That wave of anxiety, as awful as it feels, it will eventually peak and then start to fade, all on its own. You don't have to do anything to make it go away. Let's just land on this, because it is the most important takeaway of all. I really need you to hear this. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are a human being who is feeling anxious and is doing everything you know how to do to feel safe in the world. These behaviors are just proof of how hard you're trying. And so, that leaves us with one final big question to think about. The goal can't be to get rid of all uncertainty in life. I mean, that's just impossible, right? The real freedom comes when we change our relationship with uncertainty. So, what happens when we stop trying to fight it and instead just learn to live alongside it?